Kelly sat silently in the large dining room, the crystal chandeliers reflecting off the dark wood table. She had just heard something she had never expected. The family had decided to give the CEO position of Anderson Home Goods to her brother, Jason. Her heart pounded as she looked around the table, expecting someone to laugh, to say it was a joke. But no. Her parents' faces were stony, and Jason leaned back in his chair, grinning triumphantly as if he had won the lottery. And in fact, he had won. Won without doing anything. Mom, Dad, I've worked hard for the company all these years. Kelly tried to keep her voice even. I've helped optimize the supply chain, negotiate contracts, improve business performance. And now I'm being pushed aside to make way for Jason? Her mother sighed in pity. Kelly, you work hard, but you're too rigid, too rational. Jason has the leadership qualities the company needs. Leadership? Kelly laughed bitterly. He's never held a job for more than a few months, ran out of money twice, and then came back to Mom and Dad for help. He doesn't know anything about running a business. Her father nodded, as if it were true. You're good with numbers, Kelly, but you're not as inspiring as Jason. Jason shrugged, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Don't feel bad, little sister. You can still be involved, in a supporting role. Supporting? The word hit her like a slap in the face. They didn't see her as contributing. They didn't believe she had leadership potential. They just saw her as someone who stood behind Jason's success. She turned to her mother, hoping for a glimmer of support. But her mother just patted her hand, as if she were a child. You should focus on something else, Kelly. Maybe you can start your own small business. Something inside Kelly snapped. They didn't just write her off. They didn't trust her. If they thought she could do just one small project, she would show them. She would build something so big they couldn't ignore it. She stood up, her chair almost falling back. Without a word of goodbye, she left the table, the house. And as the door closed behind her, a fierce determination filled her. She was going to prove them wrong. Kelly threw herself into the job with everything she had. She spent every hour, every day, building Anderson Living, her own signature furniture brand. She raised capital, hired a talented team, signed contracts with the best suppliers. During the first 2 years, sales exploded. She was featured in business magazines, hailed as a promising young businesswoman. She believed she had won, had proven her family wrong in underestimating her. But business wasn't an easy game. As the economy began to slow, supply chains faltered, and manufacturing costs soared. Several strategic partners abruptly pulled out, leaving her with unfulfilled contracts and a slew of delayed orders. Kelly tried to make ends meet, but the financial pressure was on her. How long can we hold out? She asked Noah, her CFO. He sighed, setting down a thick file. With our current cash flow, 3 months. Without new investors or a loan, we'll have to close. Kelly felt her heart sink. She had put everything into this company: time, money, faith. She had given up her family, her reputation, and her stability just to prove that she could do it. Now it seemed like everything was slipping away. She wasn't giving up easily. She knocked on the doors of banks and hedge funds, but no one wanted to invest in a company on the brink of collapse. She tried to attract customers, offered discounts, but that only caused profits to plummet even faster. The fateful day finally arrived. She stood in her empty office, watching her last employee pack up. The once proud Anderson Living sign was taken down. She signed the liquidation papers, her hand shaking. From the height of her fame, she fell to the bottom. Alone and empty, Kelly walked out of the office. No company, no title, nothing but the harsh truth. She had failed. After Anderson Living collapsed, Kelly fell into a state of emptiness. She had no work to do, no employees to manage, no stressful meetings or strategies to plan every day. All she had now was an empty apartment, unpaid bills, and a fear that gripped her. She had thought that if she failed, she would be able to pick herself up and try again. But now, when failure actually happened, she was no longer so sure. She felt exhausted, both physically and mentally. In the early days, she tried to convince herself that everything would be okay. But as time passed, the phone stopped ringing, no one sent emails, and she slowly realized that the world was still running without her. With no income, she was forced to leave her luxurious apartment. She moved to a smaller apartment in the suburbs, where the rent was cheaper. Her designer clothes now lay dormant in the closet, with no more fancy meetings or big events to attend. She had prided herself on her independence, but now, each passing day only made her feel more lost. She avoided meeting old friends, partly because she was embarrassed, partly because she didn't want to hear empty words of encouragement. Everyone told her that she had tried her best, that failure was just a lesson, but those words didn't help her feel better. At night, she tossed and turned on her old bed. Memories of the company, of the employees, of the glorious days kept appearing in her mind. One evening, in despair, she picked up the phone and called her mother. She hadn't done so in the past 3 years. When she heard the familiar voice on the other end of the line, tears welled up in her eyes. "Mom!" She choked, not knowing what to say next. The other end of the line was silent for a few seconds. Then her mother gently replied, "Kelly, are you okay?" She wasn't okay, but this was the first time in years that she felt like someone still cared about her. Amidst the brokenness and loss, perhaps she hadn't completely lost everything. After months of being overwhelmed by grief and loss, Kelly realized that she couldn't go on like this. She had failed, but that didn't mean her life was over. She began to think about what really mattered, about why she had ever wanted to succeed. It wasn't just about money or fame, but also about passion, about the feeling of creating something meaningful. One day, while cleaning up her old documents, she accidentally found an old notebook where she used to write down her ideas, plans, and ambitions. She flipped through the pages, rereading her passionate words from before. She realized that, although Anderson Living was no longer there, her desire to create value still existed within her. But this time, she wanted to do things differently. She no longer chased after dreams that were too big and lost herself in them. She wanted to build something more sustainable, not only for herself, but also for those around her. With her last savings, she took a course on community development and small business management. Here, she met many people who had failed like her, but they still persevered and kept going. Their stories inspired her, helping her realize that failure is not the end, but just a chapter in life. Gradually, she started a small project, a consulting company to help young businesses avoid the mistakes she had made. At first, it was not easy. She had to contact customers herself, rebuild her reputation, and build trust from scratch. But this time, she did not rush. She was patient, step by step, listening and learning from those who had gone before her. Not long after, she received her first contract from a small startup. It was not a big contract, but for her, it was extremely important. It marked the beginning of a new chapter in her life, a chapter where she no longer lived just to pursue success, but to find true meaning in what she did. Kelly was no longer the woman she was years ago. She had lost everything, but in the end, she found herself. After all the events she has experienced, Kelly gradually realizes that happiness lies not in fame or money, but in the simple things that she had previously neglected. When she was the director of Anderson Living, she always thought that as long as she achieved great success, she would feel satisfied. But in reality, the years of chasing work, trying to expand the company, and build her personal image made her increasingly distant from her family, friends, and herself. Now, without a huge fortune or an illustrious career, she finds peace in the little things. She has time to walk every morning, listen to the birds chirping, watch the leaves swaying in the wind. She can spend the evening chatting with her parents, cooking with them, and enjoying cozy family meals, things that she had always overlooked because of her busy life. Kelly also realized that the people who truly cared for her were not her former business partners or colleagues, but those who were there for her even when she lost everything. Her close friends were still there, cheering her up whenever she felt discouraged. Her neighbors who had been forgotten by her were now the ones who helped her find joy in simple things. She also learned how to help others without expecting anything in return. During the time she rebuilt her life, she joined a nonprofit organization that helps small businesses overcome difficulties. When she saw young people full of enthusiasm but lacking in experience, she saw herself in them. She wholeheartedly guided and shared the lessons she had learned from her failures. Gradually, she realized that happiness does not lie in how much money she has or how many people praise her, but in the values she brings to this life. A sincere thank you from a young entrepreneur she helped, an afternoon sitting with her parents, chatting about old memories, or simply the feeling of peace when reading a good book. Those are the things that make her truly happy. Kelly no longer regrets the past or wishes to return to the glorious days of the past. She understands that happiness is not a distant destination, but the meaningful moments she creates every day. After all the events, Kelly realized that forgiveness not only helps her let go of the burden in her heart, but also opens up opportunities to start a new life. She used to hold resentment towards those who betrayed her, towards business partners who turned their backs on her when she was in trouble, and even towards herself for past mistakes. But gradually, she understood that holding on to those negative emotions only made her more hurt and unable to move on. One of the first steps on this journey is to forgive herself. Kelly used to be tormented by the wrong decisions that caused the company to collapse, causing her to lose everything she had built. She blamed herself for being too ambitious, for not listening to the advice of those who truly cared about her. But instead of wallowing in regret, she learned to accept those mistakes as part of the process of growing up. She understood that everyone makes mistakes. The important thing is to learn from them so as not to repeat them. Not only forgiving herself, Kelly also learned to forgive those who hurt her. One day, when she accidentally met an old colleague who had turned his back on her when she was in trouble, she realized that she no longer felt as angry as before. That person also no longer had the arrogance of the past, but expressed regret for not standing by her when she needed him most. Instead of blaming, Kelly just smiled and said that everything was in the past. She understands that everyone has their own choices, and not everyone is brave enough to stay when the storm comes. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting everything or easily trusting those who have hurt you, but freeing yourself from negative emotions. And when she lets go of those burdens, she feels lighter, ready to welcome the good things ahead. Second chances do not always come from the outside, but sometimes they come from changes in each person's thinking. For Kelly, forgiveness is the door that opens a new life, where she is no longer bound by the past, but can freely move forward with a lighter heart. After the pain and loss, Kelly gradually realized that love is not just a fleeting emotion, but also a healing process, helping people find themselves again. She used to be afraid to love, afraid to put her trust in someone because of her painful past. The people she once trusted left her in her difficult times, causing her to lose faith in true love. However, life always has a way of bringing people to unexpected things, and love came to her in a way she did not expect. At first, Kelly didn't think she would open up to anyone. She focused on rebuilding her career, healing herself by traveling, reading books, and spending time with herself. But then, a man appeared. He didn't try to change or force her to love right away. He just quietly stayed by her side, listened to her when she needed it, and respected her personal space. It was that sincerity that made Kelly gradually let go of the barriers in her heart. Love is not a miracle that instantly erases all wounds, but a process of learning to accept and heal together. Kelly understood that, to have a lasting relationship, she couldn't keep looking back at the past, but had to learn to cherish the present. That man was not perfect. He also had his own pain and hurt, but they both chose to be together, going through difficult times together. Love helped Kelly learn to trust again. She realized that not everyone is the same. Not everyone leaves when she has difficulties. She understood that a true relationship is not only about happy moments, but also about companionship accepting each other's shortcomings, and getting better together every day. Most importantly, love helps Kelly heal the wounds in her heart. It does not make her forget what happened, but makes her understand that the past does not define her. Finally, Kelly realizes that love does not only come from another person, but also from herself, loving, forgiving, and appreciating herself. And only when she truly learns to love herself can she fully receive love from others. After many ups and downs, Kelly realized that people cannot stay in the same place forever, but must constantly grow and change. The difficulties and losses she has faced not only left wounds, but also helped her become stronger, looking at things more maturely. In the past, Kelly always lived by her emotions, letting her pain control her life. She was afraid of change, afraid of stepping out of her comfort zone because she was worried that she would fail again. But then, she understood that if she kept avoiding it, she would never find true happiness. Change is not easy, especially when people are used to a certain lifestyle, a habit, or a fixed way of thinking. But Kelly gradually learned to adapt. She began to change the way she looked at problems, no longer being too pessimistic or blaming herself when things did not go as planned. She understood that every mistake brought a valuable lesson, helping her to improve herself. The pain of the past was no longer a burden, but became a motivation for her to rise up, to prove that she deserved a better life. Kelly's maturity process was not only shown through her thoughts, but also through her actions. She dared to step out of her comfort zone, try new things, and face the fears that she had always avoided. She no longer let the past hold her back, but proactively took control of the future, living with a more optimistic and stronger mindset. Finally, Kelly realized that maturity is not about becoming a perfect person, but learning to accept yourself, love yourself, and be willing to change to have a more meaningful life. And that is the most valuable thing that life has taught her.